Now we'll begin today's webinar, What Small Business Owners Should Stop Doing to Stay Sane. And I'd like to bring Dawn on the line now to begin her presentation.
Thank you so much, Alexa. Welcome, everybody. I'm just so thrilled to be here. And the title of the webinar, What Small Business Owners Should Stop Doing to Stay Sane, implies something very important. No one ever tells a small business owner what they should stop doing. Have you ever noticed? Everybody tells you to do more social media, work harder, work longer hours. But what if there was somebody in the crazy crush of running a small business who actually said to you, you know what, there are 5 things that you can stop doing, and it's going to free up some capacity, it's going to save your sanity, and it's actually going to double your profitability. Is it worth listening to? And the answer is, of course, yes. And so I just want to thank 2 of our sponsors today, particularly FedEx. These are amazing people. The small business organization within FedEx are your advocates. And FedEx has a spectacular ground game, in case you didn't know that. And they do an amazing job of shipping internationally. You really need to make FedEx a strategic partner, because particularly if you have, for example, products that are perishable, these guys have a special packaging lab to get your product from your warehouse to your customers in perfect shape. They do amazing things, half of which most of us don't even know. So get to know the FedEx organization and the SCORE organization. We'll talk more about what's available to you at SCORE at the end of this webinar. But I want to thank them very much, because they're the ones who give me the license to get to know you a lot better. So who is Dawn Fotopulos with that crazy Greek last name? I'm on a mission. And the mission is to double small business survival rate. So if you've got your phone on, if you got your door open, please close your phone, close your door, because I've saved 500 businesses in the last 4 years alone. And if you're listening to this webinar, you have an opportunity to double or triple your profitability in a short time, and I'm not blowing smoke. I've been in the trenches about 20 years. And if you take a look at this slide on the lower right-hand corner, the women that are in those beautiful faces that are in that photograph with me, they're engineers, they're bridge builders, they were amazing people. And that was at the Intercity Capital Connections Conference here in New York. And in the middle of that slide are all the webinars that are published permanently on the SCORE website, and I'll give you a link so that you can have access to them. But the last time we got together on a call like this, we did the power of pricing, which was a very content-rich webinar, and the purpose of which was to show business owners just like you how to price your products and services, because most leave so much money on the table. Accounting for the Number Phobic, a survival guide for small business owners, is really a book. It's an award-winning book. It won Best Business Book of 2015. It's a book that teaches you all the basics you should have known before you opened the business but never learned. And it's a funny book on accounting. It's illustrated by a Disney artist. So if you've ever been intimidated about the numbers, this is a great breakthrough book for you. Okay, let's talk about the problem, and then we'll talk about the 5-point solution. And I want to show you an illustration. This is the doom loop. It took me 17 years to finally clarify this in my head, but this is what I have seen writ large. I've spoken to face-to-face no less than 10,000 small business owners in the time I've been doing this kind of work. And this is what I see them doing. If profits are down, all of them say, I want to grow my business. If you did a search online for grow my business, you get like 650 million answers to that, because everybody wants to grow their business. And the way they do that is they're going to discount their prices, because, you know, they're so hyper about trying to get new customers, because they think that's where new revenues are going to come from. So they discount price to close more business. When they do that, it destroys gross margin, which is right here. Gross margin is what you get to run your business on, by the way, and we'll talk about this in details in a second. It destroys your net income. What's net income? It's profitability. You're in business for that bottom line. It doesn't matter what your sales are. It matters what your bottom line is, and again, we'll talk about that. And what ends up happening is you end up working a whole lot harder with a whole lot less to show for it. And it's a doom loop, because you're doubling down on bad strategy. And what we want to do in this presentation is we want to show you how to stop the madness to, in fact, reverse the doom loop so you can work half as hard and make twice as much money. Sound good? Let's talk about the 5-point solution. Okay. So if we can convince you to do these 5 things, even if you do only one of these 5, it will transform your business, it will transform your mindset, and it will transform the risk profile of the future of your business. So let's just start with defining reality, okay? You got to stop ignoring your financial statements. So I did a survey among 4,000 accounting professionals over a period of 4 years because I'm a speaker at the Scaling New Heights conference. And I asked how many of them reconcile statements for your clients, people just like you, every single month. All the hands went up. And I said, how many of your clients actually read the statements that you send to them? And the laughing started. And how many understand, those who do open them up, how many understand them and make better business decisions as a result? And no hands went up. So I'm going to argue with you to not so much read your financial statements by yourself. First, you have to understand them, and I'll show you how to do that. And if you can get up to speed in like 48 hours, that's a pretty good investment of your time. And then how to use your accountant as a strategic partner and your SCORE mentors as a strategic partner to help you understand what's really going on in your business, not what you think is going on in your business. That's what we mean by define reality. Your accountant is a great unsung hero of your business, and stop treating them like an expense instead of the investment that they are. And we'll give you some tips on how to do that because they want to be that role for you, by the way. And I'm going to show you how to get maximum return on investment for your accountant's expertise because they're geniuses and we don't listen to them the way we should. And if we did, it would transform the future of our business. Product line. Everybody has a product line. And you got to stop offering loss leader products or services. I'll define what that is, but it's basically this kind of thinking. Well, I lose money on every sample, but I'll make it up in volume. Or I lose money on that particular product, I'm going to bundle it with other products where I make a lot of money, and then that's going to help me close more business. That's false thinking, and it's draining you of profitability, and I'm going to show you how to avoid that and actually close more business. Is it possible? Yes. I've done it thousands of times. Unprofitable customers. You got to stop over-servicing unprofitable customers, but the key to this is you got to be able to identify who is profitable and who is not. And most small business owners think that a large customer is a profitable customer, which is not necessarily the case. The flip side to that is point number 5, existing customers. You have to stop ignoring your existing customer base. Don't take them for granted. And I'm going to show you how very powerful it is when you nurture relationships with existing customers. It is the absolute killer app. If you want to improve profitable sales, this is the way you do it. So let's get to it. Defining reality, stop ignoring your financial statements. And really, your financial statements answer 3 questions. This is really as complicated as it gets. I mean, most people look at their financial statements like cod liver oil. They go, oh yeah, I know it's good for me, but it's just awful going down. Let me simplify it for you. Every time you run, any time anybody runs a business, you got to be able to answer 3 questions, and really only 3. Are you making money? And the answer you'll find on your profit and loss statement. Do you have enough cash to pay the bills for 3 months? That means, can you cover your operating expenses for 3 months, at least 1 quarter? Your cash flow statement is going to answer that question. And are you creating or destroying wealth? And your balance sheet's going to answer that question. So your financial statements, you know what they are? They're your spouse. I know it sounds crazy, but they really are. They're always speaking to you, but can you hear them? Are you listening to them? Okay, so your financial dashboard, those 3 musketeers that I just mentioned, right? Your net income statement, your cash flow statement, and your balance sheet are a lot like the dashboard on your automobile. Your net income statement, we use the metaphor that your net income statement is a lot like your speedometer, right? Your speedometer doesn't tell you if you're driving over the speed limit. You have to know what the speed limit is and know where the calibration is on your speedometer. Well, it's the same thing with your net income statement. You need to know if you're generating enough profit or not, and frankly, what to do about it. This illustration, by the way, is taken from Numberphobic, and it was illustrated by a Disney artist, Ron Bucalo, who's just a very funny man. At any rate, we're trying to find something everybody knows and connect it to something that feels intimidating. Cash flow is a lot like your gas gauge. Your gas gauge doesn't tell you to go buy gas. It's up to you to figure out that if your calibration is on E for empty, you better go buy some gas because you're going to be in trouble if you don't. But your cash flow statement will tell you if you have enough cash to run the business, and if you don't, you have to think about things you should do to fix that. Otherwise, you'll go bankrupt. So, of course, let's figure that out before we're in distress. Good idea, yeah? Okay. Your balance sheet is very important because it captures everything that's happened in your business from the beginning to today. And your balance sheet, frankly, helps value your business. So are you just creating a job for yourself, or do you really have an asset? Are you building an asset that you can sell? We're not going to get into the cash flow and balance sheet on this particular call, but you should see that the net income statement is part of the bigger picture. So let's take a look at the net income statement. And what you see here is you see a whole lot of piles of money. And what your net income statement really is it's a great big pile of money, which is your net revenues, right? That's your sales. And then it decrements because we got to pay a whole bunch of bills. We got to pay our suppliers. That's your cost of goods. And then we're left with gross margin. And remember I said earlier, you run your business on gross margin. You don't run it on revenues. You don't run it on sales. They are correlated, but really your gross margin is what's going to determine how easy or difficult it's going to be for you to pay your fixed expenses, variable expenses, and then earnings before taxes is what you have left to pay all the various governmental agencies that are in partnership with you, whether we like it or not. But the net income, that tiny little pile down here, is why you're in business. If you're running a grocery store, for every $1 of sales you bring in, you have about a penny and a half on the bottom line, and I'm not joking. Now, if your accountant or your bookkeeper were to print out your net income statement, this is what it would look like. This is exactly the same as this, but we just put some values to it. So your sales for our purposes is $90K. You have to pay your suppliers, your labor, and your direct materials. $70,000 is what you have to run the business, and then you've got your fixed and variable expenses. Your earnings before taxes in this particular example is $16K. Your taxes are $8K, and what you have left over is $8,000. In this case, net income over your sales, for every $1 in sales, how much drops to your bottom line is about 9%. I'm going to tell you something no one's ever going to tell you. This number down here, it needs to be about 15% in order for you to have a viable business. No one ever talks about this stuff, but until you get to 15%, you're not out of the woods. We're going to give you some ideas on how to do that. So let's get to it. This is your cash flow statement, which is nothing more than like a leaky bucket, right? You have starting cash. Cash comes in as clients pay you. Cash goes out as you pay expenses, and then you have ending cash. Again, Numberphobic will take you through this in greater detail, and also, frankly, how to collect from customers that owe you money. I had a lady in Canada who took our advice, and she was able to collect on a $100,000 receivable that had been outstanding for 2 years. She was able to collect on it in 1 week's time. So at any rate, it's in the book, and you can read it for yourself. This is actually a metaphor for your balance sheet. And your bank is going to put your balance sheet underneath a microscope to see if, in fact, there's a lot of risk in your business, not so much risk, or riskless. And that's important because most of us have to have a credit line. There are times, slow periods, where we have to draw down on that credit line to keep the business afloat. And the balance sheet's going to help answer the questions that the bankers are always going to have. And by the way, your investors are also going to care a whole lot about what your balance sheet says about the risk profile of your business. Again, Numberphobic will take you through the details of this. So let's take a look at your product line. And the big argument that we want to present to you is to stop offering loss leader products or services. And these are basically products or services that have a negative gross margin. So what it basically is, and this is Wikipedia, which is not always my framework for definitions, but I thought they had a good one, a product sold at a loss to attract customers. So again, the doom loop mentality, what is it? I need more customers. Never mind the quality of those customers, I just need a lot of them. That's the thinking in the doom loop, and I want to change your thinking about it. The first thing you have to do is you got to look at every single product or service that you offer in your business, and it needs to work just as hard for your business as you do. So every time you ring the cash register and you sell product A has to earn the business at least a 30% gross margin in order for that product to be worth offering. And if it doesn't, and there are some businesses where, frankly, the gross margin needs to be higher than that. The only businesses where you can get away with a lower gross margin is if you turn your product line very, very quickly, like if you're selling ice cream. You probably can get away with a slightly lower gross margin because it's a cash business, and especially in the summertime, you're selling tons of it. But as a rule of thumb, every time you ring the cash register and you sell product A, product B, product C, it should jump that 30% gross margin hurdle rate. And if you don't know if that's happening, your accountant or your bookkeeper can tell you. The second thing you need to take a look at is, are you discounting your products and services to attract a price-sensitive customer? What's a price-sensitive customer? That's a customer who doesn't care about anything but what they're paying for what they're getting. And most of us do not buy only on price. Do we have good servicing? Are our strategic partners really knowledgeable? There are 100 reasons why we don't buy from the cheapest resource. So don't get into that doom loop kind of thinking that you've got a discount in order to attract a customer. But be very careful. If you attract a price-sensitive customer because you're discounting, they will never buy from you at full price, and you can't run a business by simply discounting all the time. We went through this in the Power of Pricing, which is the webinar we did before this one. It is the recording is published on the SCORE website. You need to watch it because there's great alternatives to discounting. Gives you the ideas on how to promote your products and services without putting your profitability on life support. And then if you drop your lowest margin product or service, what would happen to your business? And I encourage you to think about doing this, because if a product does not meet that 30% gross margin hurdle rate, you either have to change your pricing strategy, your discounting strategy, or you got to drop it altogether, or you got to do a better job of communicating the value to your target audience. But one way or another, you should not keep that product at that low gross margin in your product line without doing something. So if you actually did drop some of your low gross margin products, it is entirely possible that you might reduce revenues a little bit, but you could actually drive up profitability. And I know that's very counterintuitive to a lot of folks. So let me give you a real life example of what that looks like. This is a landscaping business, okay? And in the landscaping business, they sell all kinds of products, crushed rock and paving stones and plants. Sod is a live product, and it's in red here because I want you to see some dynamics, okay? We are all biased towards those products that generate the most in sales. We just are naturally. And so we look at those products that generate the most in sales, and we want to protect those because we think that's what's generating our the most profitability. But I'm here to show you a real-life example where it's exactly the opposite. Paving stones only generate 20% of revenues, but it has a gross margin of 40%, which jumps that 30% hurdle, remember? Crushed rock is about 30% of our revenues. It generates 35% gross margin. And plants, 50% gross margin. Holy cow, what does this mean? Every time you sell a plant, you're pocketing basically 50% of the retail price of that plant as gross margin, which means it contributes that much more to your ability to pay your bills. If we had a choice, okay, to promote paving stones or, crushed rock or plants, or if we had a choice to promote sod or plants, you would promote plants because every plant you sell is going to generate almost, actually more than 4 times the amount of money, or almost 5 times the amount of money that sod will. In this case, sod did 20% of revenues, and it only generated 9% gross margin. So sod is a commodity. Can we be honest? It is. And it also goes bad really quickly. It's extremely expensive to inventory. It's heavy. It's bulky. It takes up a lot of warehouse space. So in this particular example, what we recommended to the landscaper who was in the Texas region is we said, listen, what would happen if you just dropped sod from your product line? And they said, you know, the truth of the matter is we don't do enough business for it to be worth our while. We're going to drop it from our product line. And when they did that, they freed up a ton of capacity to start promoting their plants and their paving stones, and they doubled their profitability in record time. Second item, unprofitable customers. You got to stop over-servicing your unprofitable customers. But the challenge here is you got to know who's unprofitable and who isn't. So the first thing you have to do is you've got to look at your customer base by gross margin. Now, that's not easy to do. You typically have to have your bookkeeper or your accountant pull that information for you. I don't know a single small business that looks at their customers by gross margin. But if you do that, it's going to give you a lot of visibility. Does each sale by each customer jump that gross margin hurdle? Remember that 30% gross margin hurdle? I want you to think about your customer base the same way you would think about your investment portfolio. And every single customer represents a revenue stream for your business. So you got to ask your bookkeeper or your CPA to pull the account for you. And what you're going to see, okay, is you're going to see some customers that generate a lot in sales have very low gross margin on a percentage basis. And the flip side is also true. You're going to find some customers that you really haven't focused on sales-wise that have enormous gross margin potential. So the first thing you have to remember is just looking at revenues by customer is going to give you some false cues. And remember, you don't want just sales. You don't want just grow your sales. You want loyal, profitable sales from loyal and profitable customers. So things like subscriptions, referrals are very powerful when you have a profitable customer and they refer other people to your business, enormously profitable. But you want high gross margin sales because that's what's going to drive your profitability in the long haul. So let me give you an example of what this looks like. And this is a real life example. This is an Etsy seller, and they had hundreds of customers, but we just looked at their top 3. And customer A was a really important customer. They generated 50% of this Etsy seller's revenues, but their average gross margin was really low, only 20%. Customer B, on the other hand, only generated about 20% of revenues based on their current sales rate, and their average gross margin was really high. Same thing with customer B. Even lower in revenues, but even higher in gross margin. And why? It had to do with what they were actually buying from this Etsy seller. Certain products had very high gross margin characteristics. So where should your sales focus be? This is the question. Once you get this information, which relationships should you be nurturing? Once you get this relationship on your product line, which products should you be promoting? And what would happen to net income if you actually did this? And I'm just telling you, net income could double or triple overnight. So you got to be aware of a couple of traps, of a series of traps. The first is very large customers who know they generate a lot in revenues for your business. They're going to require large discounts. They're going to require customized service. And all of that means there's a high likelihood your gross margin is going to get squeezed. When you do business with a large customer, there's one thing you got to make absolutely sure, that regardless of where your pricing falls, they've got to meet that 30% gross margin hurdle rate after the discount, okay, not before. You got to take a look at small customers who purchase high gross margin products. Remember, we talked about paving stones and such. You got to look at those small customers because they may be very high potential for you and you're just ignoring them, and we'll talk about that in a minute. You got to take a look at your repeat customers, the people that buy from you over and over again. They may not be buying a lot. In other words, their average sales may be relatively low, but they're loyal and they see you as a go-to resource. So even if they're small, they still could be very high potential. The most important thing to remember, though, too, is that growth is not what you're after. You got to be careful getting into that growth doom loop, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to grow any faster than what you can deliver with excellence, and that comes from my hero, Peter Drucker. So one of the things that you can do, actually two things you can do that are really going to help you, is work with the FedEx organization and work with a SCORE mentor to help you scale profitably. One of the things that I have seen FedEx do face-to-face when they talk to their Entrepreneurs Advisory Board members, and we'll talk about this wonderful Small Business Grant Award contest, is they help them drive down their cost of doing business, and it's just brilliant. And SCORE mentors can help you run the business for more profitability. Okay, so if you want to know how to think about your customer base, this is a 2x2 matrix that comes to us from the good people at Boston Consulting Group. Again, this is a group that's done a lot of work with Harvard. And you basically have two characteristics: gross margin per purchase and hard or easy to close and service. So what we're doing is we're mapping your client base against these two characteristics. So this nice green bar is where we want all your clients to be, every single one of them. We want them to be high gross margin. They're buying high gross margin products and services from you. And they're really easy to close and to service. Over here, low gross margin and they're hard to close. Please stop servicing these guys again. But you have to identify them. And these guys in here, you should hand them on a silver platter to your competition, okay? Let your competition deal with the aggravation. Now, these two are really interesting quadrants. Over here, you have low gross margin, but they're really easy to do business with. So the challenge here is we got to increase gross margin for every sale, and there are lots of different ways to do that. Your pricing and discounting strategy is key, and if you don't know how to do that, watch the Power of Pricing webinar that we did with SCORE and FedEx, and I'll give you those links at the end of this webinar. Over here, we have exactly the opposite problem. These are customers that are buying your high gross margin products and services, but they're a little challenged to close or to service. This is an internal efficiency challenge, and if you can improve and smooth out the processes of doing business in your back office, these guys could be highly profitable. And people like FedEx and SCORE can help you think that through. So bottom line, we got to protect the people, your clients that are in this quadrant, and we got to look to see who is high potential over here, working with your strategic partners, who's high potential over here by watching that Power of Pricing webinar, and to start making some shifts with your existing client base to help you improve profitability. You got to stop ignoring your existing profitable customers, okay? A lot of times we treat our existing customers as if they're always going to be there, and you can't take them for granted. So how do you double your profitability with your existing client base? I call them the 3 R's, and they go like this. You want clients that repeat purchase from you. You're not after that first purchase. In the doom loop, everybody's just after putting out some tripwires to get a sale. You don't want a sale. You want a profitable sale. And the way you're going to get that is through repeat purchases. Most of the time, when we do business with clients, we don't make money on that sale until they bought from us at least 3 times. So just remember, it costs money to acquire a customer, and then they need to buy from us over and over again before they become profitable. It's super important that we nurture those relationships so that we can retain our profitable customers. And we got to know who those profitable customers are so that we can be very proactive about understanding what's important to them, where their pressure points are, and how we can lift burden from their shoulders, help them be more successful. And then once those profitable customers are so excited about doing business with us, we want referrals from those existing customers. That's the holy grail. That's how you get leverage. That's why virality online becomes so incredibly valuable. So we're looking for repeat purchases. We acquire them once, and we get an annuity revenue stream, a predictable revenue stream. After the first 30 days, we want retention, right? But the way you get that is by temperature checking those customers after they buy from you the first time in that first 30-day window after they buy from you. This is mission critical. If you did nothing else but took 10% of your marketing budget and reached out to your brand new clients and said, how is it working? Does it make sense? Is there something we can do to make it better, more effective, whatever for you? And let us tell you different ways that other customers are using our products and what benefit they've gained. You build a real relationship. Don't wait for that new client to call you. You reach out to them. And referrals, you want to overservice whom? Your profitable customers, because guess what they become when they get excited about what you do? They become your free sales force. Okay, so there is a reading called Putting the Service Profit Chain to Work. It's like an MBA in 12 pages. I'm on the stump about this because, man, taking an hour of your time to read this is so worth it. It's a Harvard Business Review article reprint. That's the link for it. It's also in the resource links at the end of this webinar, but it shows you that a 5% improvement, just 5%, okay? It's a tiny improvement in retention of a profitable customer can improve your profitability anywhere from 25 to 85%, and that's what I call leverage. And instead of running out there in the big, broad world and trying to close more business with people you've never met, do a deep dive on your existing customer base, nurture those relationships, because your bottom line could improve, almost increase by 100% if you do this. So please treat existing customers like you want to marry them and not like ATM machines. Okay, so here are some takeaways for you. Your financials hold the keys to your future. You got to stop ignoring them. And accounting for the number phobic makes it super easy. It is me talking over your shoulder. It's simple language. It's not intimidating. What this really is a book on strategy. It takes you through the net income statement, cash flow statement, and balance sheet, and it gives you some measurements that if your income statement is off, here are the 5 things you can do to maybe fix that. If your cash flow statement's having problems, here are the 5 things you can do to fix that. And in one weekend, you can learn the basics, and frankly, you can beat the odds. The failure rates of small business in the United States are so astronomically high that FedEx and SCORE and we've linked arms because we don't want you to become a statistic. You've worked too hard. You've made too many sacrifices, too many sleepless nights. It is time to get a return on investment, and we want you to get out of the doom loop and to do it fast. Winston Churchill, during the bombing of London in World War II, said facts are better than dreams, and we want to hand those to you in a really simple and easy way. And we want your accounting professional to become your strategic partner. How do you do that? The most important thing, the most important bridge to your accountant is you need to sit down with that accountant every month and go through your financial statement. So here's the recommendation. First thing, read Accounting for the Number Phobic, the first 4 chapters, and then sit down with your accountant and review your net income statement. It won't take longer than an hour, and put a 3-point action plan together. And this is what I encourage you to do. I want you to sit down with your accountant and say to them, I want to double my profit in the next 6 months. Give me 3 ways to do that, and lay the gauntlet at their feet, because you want to know something? They know the answer. And in many cases, because I've heard the accounting professionals say this, we give really good advice to our small business owners, but they never take that advice. If you read Accounting for the Number Phobic, not because I wrote the book, but because it's going to change your life, and you sit down with your accountant, it's going to open up the future for you. And in a 60-minute conversation, you can increase your profitability 10%, 20%, 50% if you're focused on the right things. Your accountant is there to help you understand reality, but remember, your financial statements capture what already happened. And you can't change the past, but you can certainly understand it better. And then you can say, well, knowing what I know now, if I make better decisions today, it's going to change the future. And sit down with your accountant and make them your advisor, because you know what? They want to see you succeed too. So you're not just paying them for their hands and feet to do tax preparation, which at this time of the year everybody's doing. You really want them to help you improve profitability and cash flow, and they have the answer, okay? So you got to learn the basics. That's going to build a bridge with your accounting professional. The book is actually very funny, and it's designed to be so that it's not boring, but it's also very pointed and hard-hitting. We don't give you any fluff. And if you can take 2 days out of your life to do this, it'll save the next 20 years of struggling. The link is there so that you can purchase this. If you do purchase this, please let me know because I want to know. So there are a couple of things. A lot of people have said that they've been confused by everything their accountant has ever shown them. But a lot of people have also said they weren't even halfway through this book and they can see exactly where they're going wrong in terms of their product line, how they manage their customer base, and how they manage pricing, because it is simple and it's well explained. Someone actually said, I hate accounting, but I love this book. But more importantly, and it really breaks my heart if you have said, I really wish I had this book 20 years ago. It would have saved me so much pain. So if you don't have a bookkeeper, I gain no benefit, by the way, by telling you this, but you should know that this exists. Intuit has a really great website called findaproadvisor.com. And these are pro advisors who have gone through training. Look for the advanced designation because these are the guys that are really expert at what they do. If you put in your zip code, it's like an Angie's List for bookkeepers. Put in your zip code and look for somebody that has industry experience in the industry that you're operating in right now, because they're the ones that have all your competitive framework as well. But they're brilliant people. They're less expensive than CPAs. And it's not that you don't need a CPA, but what they'll do is you can have the same kind of relationship with them. They'll put your statements together. They will reconcile your bank statements, your cash flow statement, income statement, and balance sheet every month. And then when it comes time to actually do your tax preparation, they can save you a lot of money with your CPA. I actually have a bookkeeper who does that for my business. So I encourage you to consider that. You got to review your dashboard monthly and then put a plan together based on what that dashboard is telling you. So you're going to be shocked at how quickly your profitability can rise with half the effort in record time. So make your accountant and your bookkeeper your strategic partner, and don't just hire your CPA for tax prep. They're very, very smart people. And so you're hiring them. You may as well get access to their brain cells too, which means all their experience. Review your product line. Every time you ring the cash register, that sale must jump that gross margin hurdle rate of 30% or greater. And if a product is not generating this for you, first find out if it is. If it isn't, you actually have to either raise price, raise value, and then raise price, because you can't raise price in a vacuum. And here's the statistic. 9 out of 10 small business owners aren't charging enough for what they do, okay? So watch the power of pricing webinar. Raise the price. You can change your target audience. And again, you don't want a price-sensitive target audience. Or partner with a FedEx organization to help you reduce some of your internal costs. Partner with a SCORE mentor who can help look at your back office and see where you're wasting time or where you got too much expense to produce that product and actually service your client base, or you got to drop that product from your line. But don't ignore your high gross margin products either. You got to align your sales efforts with your high gross margin products. That's what's called leverage. So you got to review your client base. Not every client is created equal, and not all large clients that generate a lot in sales revenues are your most profitable dollar for dollar, okay? Every time you sell a product to a customer, the price you charge has to jump that 30% gross margin hurdle rate even after promotions and discounts. And don't assume that a high revenue producing client produces high gross margin. So you got to align your customer relationship efforts, right, your customer relationship management efforts with your high gross margin clients. That's the way you generate more in gross margin, earnings before taxes, and ultimately bottom line. Okay, next steps. What do you do? So this all sounds great, Dawn. How do I operationalize this? The Power of Pricing webinar you can find on the SCORE.org website. It is absolutely worth an hour of your time, just like this webinar. It was an hour's time. Pick up Accounting for the Number Phobic. Read the first 4 chapters. It will save you so much pain. It's on Amazon. You can buy it on Kindle, by the way, for half of what the hard copy is. I actually like hard copies. I'm a teacher. I like to circle things and dog-ear my pages, but that's up to you. And it's also on Audible. And you can reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. That's my personal email. And believe it or not, I answer my emails, dfotopulos@gmail.com. What are you going to get? You're going to get a copy of this presentation, the ebook transcript of this presentation, the number phobic study guide, and also a worksheet. So let's talk about what SCORE has available to you. Free expert advice. I'm going to say that one more time because it sounds too good to be true. Free expert advice. These are people that have been on the journey longer than you. They've made their mistakes and they're very successful. They are volunteering their efforts because they care about your future. And there are 350 SCORE offices in the United States. There's probably one near you. Are you dreaming? The answer is no. This is where you find them, behind the SCORE.org link, and when you hit that link, that's an illustration of what you're going to see, and you can work with them remotely or face-to-face. You are out of your minds if you don't find a great SCORE mentor. And by the way, if you work with someone and it doesn't seem to be quite working for you, or you need somebody with different expertise, you can find somebody else, but this is no money. You have accountability. You're not in the desert by yourself. A lot of entrepreneurs are, and this is just a spectacular resource you should take advantage of. Okay, drum roll please. March the 25th is a date that you should put in your calendar. That is the deadline for you to apply for the FedEx Small Business Grant Contest. There is real money behind this. You can win as much as $50,000 as a grant if your business wins in this contest. You put your business in the running for a share of almost $250,000 in grants and prizes. And what does this mean? This is not a loan. This is an investment that FedEx is making in your business. And I'm telling you, I've met so many people that have been winners of this contest, and they are amazing. You become an alumnus of this program. FedEx extends the red carpet for you. You get access to the brain trust inside FedEx. Everybody you know, including you, should be signing up for this because you have absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain. You don't have to pay this back. This is an investment that FedEx is making in you. So FedEx.com grant contest, that is the link that will get you here. March the 25th is the deadline. So you have 20 days to get it done, but don't wait because it's going to take a little bit of time to provide all your data. Save time and effort? You bet. So this is what you're going to get when you hit that link. There's something that we're calling the Business Owner Stop Doing ebook. You know what that is? It's a transcript of everything I talked about on this webinar. So you're also going to get a copy of the PDF slides. You're going to get a copy of the Number Phobic Study Guide. That is my gift to you, whether or not you buy the book. It's going to help you get the most out of number phobic principles, which we talked about here. And in addition to this, you're going to get a worksheet, which is basically a great guide when you sit down with your accounting professional, and it talks about what your next steps are. It's going to help you build an action plan month after month. And again, reach out to me at dfotopulos@gmail.com. This is what it's going to look like when you hit that link. All you have to do is sign up, and I want to thank you so much for joining me. Faleminderit means thank you in Albanian, just for the record, and I want to hear your questions because I'm here live. By the way, if you're asking a question and we don't get to it, I am going to answer your questions after the call, so don't you worry. Ask your question, and whether we answer it live or after the call, you will get your questions answered. Woo! So we're there. Miss Alexa, what kind of questions do you have for us?
All right, sounds great, Dawn. Let's get into the Q&A portion of this webinar. We are going to use the remaining time to address just as many questions as we possibly can. And please note that we typically have more questions than time allows us to answer. So if we do not get a chance to address your question, we encourage you, as Dawn was mentioning earlier, to connect with a SCORE mentor if you're not already working with one. A SCORE mentor can assist you further with your business needs, help you apply these strategies that Dawn has been talking about today, The slide deck has the contact information for Dawn and FedEx to reach out for further assistance. You can download the slide deck from within the webinar platform. We are also going to be emailing all participants a copy of the slide deck along with the recording. That's going to go out here in just a little bit. So moving into the Q&A segment, the first thing that I wanted to quickly address was several folks trying to click that FedEx link to the grant contest. It looks like the link was not working. We will be sure to double check the link before we send out the slide deck. It could potentially be so many folks trying to hit it at once. Sometimes that will happen. So try it again here in just a little bit, and we'll also double check that link for you. Make sure that you do have that working link to access all of that information regarding the grant contest. So we'll jump in here to our first question, which comes to us, Dawn, from Josh. Josh is asking, as a new business with no clients, how do you introduce your service or services and their pricing?
So Josh, it's a great question, and it's a question every single new business owner needs to answer. So I'm going to take your question and I'm going to turn it 180 degrees. I want you to make believe that you're a potential client who's going to buy from you. And the first thing you have to do is answer the question why your target audience should buy from you instead of your competition. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to answer the question, what problem are you solving, or how do you intend to bless your target audience? And then you need to be really clear on who your target audience is. What is that all about? It's about articulating the value you bring to the world, and then you set price. I mentioned it sort of obliquely a little earlier in this webinar, but pricing doesn't happen in a vacuum. It has to be connected to the value that you're offering. And if you haven't watched the Power of Pricing webinar, I encourage you to do that because we do a deep dive on pricing. And just as a quick hors d'oeuvre, there are 3 benchmarks for pricing. The first is a cost plus basis, which is your minimum clearing price. Whatever it costs you to make that product or deliver that service, plus a premium of 45%. And if you can't get that in the marketplace, something's got to give. The medium price is going to be what your competitors are charging, but I give you a way of how to compete with them even if you're a new business. Again, the Power of Pricing webinar goes through that. And the holy grail is to price at what we call true economic value, which makes your internal costs and your competitors irrelevant. And you got to watch it because it will answer a lot of the questions that you have. But as a new business, you have to articulate your value first. You have to be super clear on who your target audience is, and you got to answer the question why they should buy from you than the competition. Then you can figure out what you should be pricing at. And just as a rule of thumb, remember, most small business owners, that is 80% of small business owners, underprice what they do because they don't know what's in that Power of Pricing webinar.
Okay. Dawn, we have had several folks submitting questions regarding the service industry. And do these concepts apply? And if so, how do they apply? Is it similar having a service-based business as it is to having a product-based business?
That's an excellent question, Alexa. And of course, service businesses are just different because you don't have something tangible that you're offering, but services are very important. And in fact, they drive about 70% of the U.S. economy. The challenge with a service business is you've got to be super clear on what your direct labor expenses are, because what are you selling? You're selling your capability, right? You're not just selling your time, but you're selling your capability. And what I have seen is in a lot of service businesses, they really don't know what it costs them to deliver a particular service. And let me give you a quick example of that. So a colleague of mine is an interior designer, and she did 2 things here in New York. She created plans, interior design plans, but she also did general contracting, so to take those plans and make them real. And what we discovered when we finally went through her net income statement, sort of like we did here on the call, is she was not accurately representing how much time and effort she was investing in each one of her clients' projects. So it looked like she had gross margins of 90%, but when we finally loaded up all the time that she was investing in each one of these projects, we put a gross margin together by project. So in the situation of a service business, you either look at it by project or by client. We figured out that her gross margins on developing the plans was actually fairly high, but it was very, very low when she was acting as a general contractor, because anybody who knows anything about general contracting, it's very heavy lifting. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of aggravation, and you're managing a lot of moving parts. So she actually got out of the general contracting business. It freed up time for her to do more interior design planning, which had much higher gross margin for her, and she ended up making a ton of money and actually getting 8 hours of sleep. But in the service business, it is exactly the same concept, except you've got to work with your bookkeeper and your accountant to do a better job of job costing, because that's where the problems are. Okay, you got to get your job costing right, because that tells you how much it costs you to actually deliver a particular service, and your accountant and your bookkeeper will keep you honest at that. The good ones will know how to do this.
Okay, your next question comes from Mike, asking if you support offering an incentive to loyal existing customers for a referral that closes.
Yes, absolutely. Mike, a great idea. Let me give you an example of what that might look like. Okay. So I had a boutique owner here in New York, and she had a few very loyal clients. She said, in fact, some of these clients were keeping her in business. So she said, I want to bless these clients. I said, great, how are you going to do that? She said, I'm going to offer them a 20% discount. And I almost said, what are you doing? Why are you committing financial suicide? I said, you don't have to do that. Are they asking for a discount? She said, no. I said, fine, this is what you're going to do, and I encourage you to do this, Mike. I said, give them very high-touch, exclusive access to you and to your expertise. So in her particular case, I said, this is what you're going to do. You're going to close the boutique, and you're going to open at an hour that's convenient for your best clients. You're going to get some wine and cheese, and you're going to have some very special items that are, just made available for them. You're going to put outfits together for them. There'll be a little music there. You're going to create an environment that's very exclusive and wonderful and bridge building. And then at the end, when they do buy whatever they buy, you're going to take a scarf, you're going to take a belt, you're going to take something that's memorable, and you're going to give it to them as a gift, because it costs you $50, but it represents a $100 value to them. That's called leverage. And remember something, a discount is remembered in the mind for about 5 minutes. A gift is remembered in the heart forever. So what you can do with your really high-value customers is do what Dell Computer did. Create a platinum council. Bring them close to you. Make them your strategic partners. Buy them breakfast once a year, once a quarter, whatever it is, and say, I love doing business with you. You can even do this in a Zoom meeting, by the way. I love doing business with you. How can we do a better job of servicing you? Who else should we be reaching out to? And make them your strategic partners. And yes, you can offer them a gift certificate to Amazon, or who knows what you can do, but there is a way that you can bless them without it costing you so much money that it really hurts your bottom line. So find out the things that are important to them, and then find a way to bless them in those things that really matter. That would be my recommendation. And try it, Mike. Let us know how it goes.
Okay, Dawn, our next question is from Melissa, asking if she says that, let's say your numbers are showing that the business is no longer profitable. For example, there was a change in the market. What would you say would be the best step or process to reset without throwing away everything that has been invested?
Wow, that's such a good question. And Melissa, I have to tell you, you're not the only one that has this problem. So, when you go to the doctor, what does the doctor do? The doctor checks all your vital signs, right? The doctor looks in your eyeball and looks in your ear and checks your pulse. But those tests don't tell the doctor if you have cancer or not. So what you really have to do is you have to go through a diagnostic in the business to see what is still viable in that business. So if the business is not profitable, you got to ask the why question. For the most case, in most cases, what is valuable in the business is the client base. It takes years to build a loyal client base. And then you have to take a look at what you're offering and say, is it differentiated enough? Or do we give people a good enough reason to come to us instead of the competition? If the answer is no, then you've got to reposition the business. It is entirely possible that something like a change in technology has completely disintermediated what you're doing now. So case in point, okay, artificial intelligence is disintermediating a lot of the traditional efforts that CPAs used to do. But a lot of it is keystrokes. So if artificial intelligence can take care of the keystrokes, then the real value add for a CPA is the analytic thinking and acting like a doctor, not just like a glorified secretary. So those are some of the diagnostic questions you have to ask. You have to look at your P&L. You got to look at your cash flow statement. You got to look at your client base. You got to look at your product and service offering, look at your pricing, and then, of course, look at your competitive framework because your competition has changed. I mean, you know, I've been around a long time, and I can tell you that online competition is very different than offline competition. If whatever it is you're offering is not just geographically focused, but now it's online, that's going to change your competitive frame, and it's very easy for somebody to come in and take your market share online if they really know what they're doing marketing-wise. But I don't have quite enough information to give you more than that, but those are some of the diagnostics you'll have to go through. But take a look at your client base, and if you're not sure, find out who the loyal clients are, and frankly, ask them what you can do to offer new high-value products or services. Who else are they buying from? Where is your competition falling down on the job? Because sometimes it's not just what you do, but how you do it. That's going to be your source of competitive advantage. So those are some of the questions I would ask. And then at the end of the day, after you answer those questions, you might say to yourself, you know what, it's not worth it for me to stay in business. And that actually is a real answer. Better to close a business than to keep a business afloat through loans and whatever and going into a deeper debt hole than it is to say, you know what, the business has had a great run and it's time for me to think about something else. So as hard a decision as that is to make, it's better to make that decision and start fresh than it is to try to keep something alive that's really not viable.
All right, so Dawn, those are all the questions that we have time for today during this live webinar session. So folks, if we did not have a chance to address your question during this particular live session, we encourage you to connect with a SCORE mentor who can assist you further with your business needs. And as a reminder, we will be sending out a link to the slide deck and the recording. The slide deck does contain contact information for Dawn and FedEx and a number of wonderful resources to access after the session today to assist you further as well. On behalf of SCORE and FedEx, I'd like to thank you all for attending today. And I'd like to give a very big thank you to Dawn Fotopulos for presenting with us as well. Dawn, thank you so much.
It was so great to be here with you, Alexa. I want to thank you so much for doing a great job of producing this. And again, our thanks to FedEx and the SCORE organizations.
All right, we hope that you can join us for the next live national webinar. It's being held next week on March 14th to create a powerful and practical PR strategy for your small business. This impactful session will teach you 3 easy-to-implement methods for getting into local national papers, online sites, TV, radio, and podcasts. We hope that you will sign up and join us. So thanks again, everyone. We look forward to seeing you next time, and take care.